Hi, this is Aaron Newcomb, and on this episode of FLOSS Weekly, I'm joined by Dan Lynch to talk to some of the programmers of a project called Zotonic. It's a web framework and content management system built with Erlang. You're not going to want to miss it, and it's coming up right now on FLOSS Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FLOSS Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is FLOSS Weekly with Aaron Newcomb and Dan Lynch, episode 243, recorded on February 20th, 2013, Zotonic. It's time for FLOSS Weekly, the show about free, Libra, open source software. And as usual, we come this week with a very interesting project we'll get to in just a minute. But first, I want to introduce my lovely co-host, as Randall has called me in the past, and now I get to do it. To you, Dan. Dan Lynch is here to join me to talk about Zotonic. Dan, how's it going?
It's going great, thanks. And thanks for calling me lovely. I don't get called that often enough, really.
That's what I always tell Randall, too. It's like, what are you smoking? I don't know. So that doesn't really apply. So anyway, so Randall is still on his extended vacation. I don't know. He takes these things so often. I don't know. Is it a vacation or is it just like it's a routine thing that he does now? I don't know. But he's off, I think, going to the Galapagos Islands or something at this point. I don't remember exactly where he's traveling, somewhere in South America. And so he's mistakenly turned over the reins to Dan and I to carry on the show. So we'll have to see what kind of trouble we get into today. Today on the show, our guests are from working on a project called Zotonic, I believe. We'll have to ask them and make sure we're pronouncing that correctly. But I believe it's Zotonic, which is a web framework and a content management system. So we'll have to see how those two things go together. But it looks pretty interesting. Dan, have you heard about this before? I've heard about it, but I haven't really investigated it too much. So I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't even think I'd really heard of it before we started to research it for the show. And I'm interested to learn a bit more about Erlang, because that's a language that I've never really gotten into. I certainly didn't know it was popular for web applications. So yeah, can't wait to check that out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard of it, of course, before as well, but I don't know too much about it either. And that's, I guess that's what the system is written in. So it's not PHP or some of these other things. It's actually written in Erlang, which is I don't know. It's probably not as popular, I guess, is the way to say it, as other languages, at least from my experience. Maybe I'm way off base, but I haven't heard of too many projects like this being written in Erlang.
Yeah, hosting would be the concern for me, maybe. It's just how would you host it? Because I don't know how easy it is to find Erlang web hosting. But then that's something we can ask the guests, and maybe they've probably got it all in hand already. Right.
Well, speaking of asking the guests, let's not waste any time. Let's actually bring them on right now. So here's our guests. So we've got Mark and Arjan here, and they're going to tell us all about this cool project. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi, it's going great.
Good.
Yeah.
And where are you guys speaking to us, or where are we viewing you from?
We're in Amsterdam, both of us. We're actually now at the same place, a friend of ours. Yeah, but we're in Amsterdam based.
Okay.
In the Netherlands.
And so everybody, do you have other offices, or is it just there? Is everybody just there?
I have my own office, but it's not on this location.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So first of all, to help us pronounce this correctly, is it Zotonic?
Yeah, Zotonic.
Zotonic.
Like isotonic, but then Zotonic.
Zotonic. Great.
Yeah.
Got it. Great. So give us the high-level description of what this is, because I always like to set the stage for people that pretend like you're trying to describe this to somebody that knows nothing about maybe a little bit about computers, but nothing really about software development or anything like that. How would you describe it? What would you say to someone if you said, what is this project you're working on? How would you describe it at the very high level?
It's a content management system and framework to build websites that should be fast, high volume, and real time.
So this is part of one of the things as I was researching this that I was trying to understand. So you say it's a content management system and also a web framework. So how do those two things fit together?
Yeah, this is very. Maybe Arjan. Yes, Arjan.
Well, Yeah, it's actually it's when you first install it, it's built up of different modules. It's very modular, and a few of these modules are actually coming together as a content management system. But since it's very adaptable and open to change, it's really easy to swap stuff out for different stuff, and extend and build upon it, etc. So in that sense, it's really more like a web development framework. Although it does some of the parts that it comes with, shipped with, are content management system.
So
is that clear?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it does kind of make sense that if you're going to have a web framework, that content management would be part of it anyway, right? So I think that does make sense. I mean, even if you look at any of the other web frameworks out there, content management is usually a feature at some point.
Yeah. Well, it's not a content management system per se. It's not like it has all the features that were ever invented for a content management system. It's not the most interesting feature about it, but it's very handy to have, like you were saying. So it has models. You can really easy use the CMS system to quickly try something out and then use that in your website.
Right. Now, I'm familiar with a few other systems. I mean, I'm familiar with Drupal. I'm familiar with WordPress and things like that. How does this compare to other available systems today?
Mark, you want to take this?
I can take that one. Yeah, it's quite different, to say so. We have, when you look at the different roles around building a website, and then check for, say, a front-end developer. In Drupal, you always have to code. You write PHP, you need a back-end developer. In our system, a front-end developer can basically build the whole system and overrule anything and access all models just from the templates, which just makes a very big difference. And it's also very easy to extend using the extension mechanism, defining new categories, new relations between things in the database. And all that is normally not available in other content management systems. And when you look at another role, like the programmers, then it's very easy to change the behavior of the system and to add stuff without writing templates. So you have a real big separation between the code, the templates, and the data. And that is something that really sets it apart.
Yeah, I know with because I use Drupal a little bit, and I know that they would like to say you don't have to go in and manage the PHP. But if you really want a website that does exactly what you want it to do, I found that you do have to get in there and work on the PHP quite a bit, because you can't just get everything to work just right with the basic templates and themes and all that are supplied with Drupal. I mean, there's a lot of support there. There's no doubt about it. Drupal, I think, is one of the best supported as far as plugins and things like that. But I've never gotten it to work exactly the way I want to without having to go in and edit at least some PHP to get it to work the way I want to. So I think that's a really good distinction. Is that the main reason that this project got started? How did it get started?
Yeah, it has a history indeed. My background is quite, let's say, the hardcore IT. I used to write optimizing assemblers, generators for that, compilers, all that kind of stuff. And then I came into the web corner of development, building websites. I was also a partner in a firm here in Amsterdam, Mediamatic, which has been building websites since the very start of the web. Basically, they built CD-ROMs before that. And we had this system, it's called Animator, and it's written in PHP, MySQL, a bit of C, the usual building blocks to make a system. And it turned out to be very difficult to write a system, to make a system that is very scalable. And so it can handle hundreds upon hundreds of page requests a second, but also to have it dynamic at the same time, and to have it possible to make real-time connections, to have push connections, what a normal website nowadays needs. You need to push information to the browser. And to make all that happen with technology like PHP or Django or Ruby on Rails, you need all kinds of other building blocks So you get a whole very difficult set of technologies that have to work together. When I left Mediamatic as a partner and started to work for myself, I needed, for some customers, I needed a tool to build websites again. And from the experience I had from building Animata, there's a very flexible system. I started thinking of a system that can do this push, that can do lots of page requests a second on normal hardware. Say for when you have 1 million pages or something in your database, so not too crazy. And it turned out that it was quite difficult because it was not there. Drupal can't handle it without a lot of caching. And PHP can't handle the push connections anyway. And it turned out that also Django, Ruby on Rails, everything was available in 2009, we're speaking. Couldn't do it. And so I went on a quest to see what system could do it. And I found another programming language, Erlang. And I found the building blocks already implemented by people in Erlang, like Django templates, web server, that kind of stuff, and put it together. So that was the start of Zotonic.
I think that's a good distinction between a lot. I mean, probably the biggest distinction, right, between this system and other systems is Erlang, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't really come across a whole lot of systems that use that, at least for this type of thing. I mean, what is it about that helps? I mean, you mentioned there was some modules already written, and that certainly helped. But what other reasons? Why Erlang? Can you talk a little bit about the distinction between that and other options?
Yeah, it was Erlang is a kind of system programming language, but you can build very stable systems in it that are very and can handle failure. So it has been thought out with the idea of failure in mind. That's a great distinction, and it can also handle lots and lots and lots of concurrent processes, like 1 million processes at the same time. No problem for Erlang. And that's exactly what you need for a modern web application. Erlang was built, thought out by Ericsson to make telephone switches. And when you look at the architecture of a modern web system, then you see that you have these push connections, you have the get connections, posts coming in, with also email, chat connections, all kinds of connections at the same time. And basically, a modern web system is very similar to a telephone switch, except that the kind of data that is pushed around is different. And so you see that this Erlang is actually a very good match to build a web system.
So who's using this right now? I mean, do you have some examples you could share with us? What kind of sites are built using this framework?
Arjen? Would you like to answer that?
There are. Well, of course, we don't know exactly who our users are because it's an open source product, so people can just take it and make something with it and never tell it. So we don't have official statistics of who uses it, but there are like we know that it has been used for a lot of websites. Like one is a co-browsing website where you in real time browse the web with somebody or some people who are also surfing the same page, basically taking notes, annotating stuff, etc. There's websites, a website which is like that Mark actually built, which is a Facebook for schools, basically, Max Class. So that has a lot of different features and handles a lot of users as well. There's all kinds of different websites built with it. We don't actually have, like I said, an official list of those sites, but we're actually in the process of making one because it's really nice to have some kind of showcase on the Zotonic website with the people that use it.
Yeah, and what would I need to get started if I wanted to get started on installing this? I mean, I noticed on the website there's a Git repository, and it lists a few requirements. Maybe we can go over some of those requirements real quick.
There are actually 3 ways. to install it. One is indeed the Git repository, but that turns out to be, for some people, that's just too much hassle, and they need to know Git to some extent. So we also have a Ubuntu package repository where you can just apt-get install Zotonic, and it will install Zotonic for you with the default website. But you can also download the zip file from the site to get it running. And basically, what it comes down to is that it's Erlang. So basically the only dependency that it has is Erlang and Postgres currently. And well, there's image magic.
Image magic.
Scaling images.
Right. Right.
So those are the three. You don't need. It has its own web server, so you don't need to install Apache or a Mongrel or any other middleware.
Oh wow, that kind of makes it nice. I've noticed that not a lot, but I've seen more and more people going this way. For example, with things like Python, running your own web server in Python, for example, and just basically doing away with the standard Apache or even lightweight web servers and actually implementing their own. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Do you find that helps with performance, or why did you choose to build your own web server as opposed to using one of the standards out there?
It helps definitely with performance. Yeah, we at some point some time ago we tested, and I had a very small box, and so a very simple application like Hello World from a template, the things you use for testing, and I had the Varnish cache in between, and with Varnish, the actual request rate was half of the request rate without Varnish. So it is really fast enough. It is really fast just having your own web server. And it also enables us to have virtual hosting in the same package, and also email receive in the same package, and the WebSocket connections in the same package. And that makes a huge difference, because you can just handle everything with the same logic. You don't need any other moving parts.
Right. So you're not dependent on those, literally dependent, but also dependent from a processing standpoint on those other packages.
And of course, we didn't write our own web server, but there are lots of projects out there which actually are Erlang-based web servers, and we use the ones called MochiWeb currently. So we use a lot of open source products inside Zotonic to help us establish that. Right.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. The other thing I wanted to clarify is you said you require Postgres. Why not MySQL or Maria or one of the other databases?
Yeah, it was 2009 when we started this. And the target was to have a system on one box. So say we start with a monorail, and that must be really performant. MySQL in 2009, InnoDB, was not performant when your number of cores goes up. It's only recently that they went better. And Postgres was the only one that was performant at that point. So we went Postgres. And besides that, Postgres turns out to be really bug-free from our standpoint, very well maintained. And we had a very good driver also, a binary driver. And the MySQL driver was not that good that we had. So it was no option.
But we're also in the process right now actually to add support for multiple databases. So we're still sticking with SQL, but we're actually actually abstracting the database layer so that it will support multiple database systems. Because actually, what it turns out that for installing Zotonic, installing Postgres is actually the biggest hurdle people have to take, like with the authorization, configuration, and stuff like that. So by providing a most simple SQLite driver, we're hoping to take that barrier away to make it even easier for people to get started with it.
That sounds really, really cool. And I was curious, you were talking about you ship with your own web server, but I've noticed that a lot of these kind of applications, so I'm thinking mainly of Python ones, which I know better, and maybe Rails as well, Ruby on Rails, they'll have a server, an embedded web server that you can use for development, but they don't actually deploy to that. You need like a bit, a more kind of robust setup for deployment. So could you deploy with the server that's inside Zotonic as well? Is that how you deploy?
Yes, we deploy it. Actually, we encourage people to not have any proxy in front, to just have the web server itself.
And can you set up multiple instances maybe if you have a high volume kind of site? Would you cluster it in some way, or is there some way to do that?
Actually, at the moment we have still the monorail solution. So because it turns out to be fast enough, we are working on a distributed version, and that is mostly for failover. So to make the whole system more robust, not to make it more performant. And that is quite a bit of work. So we are still working on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to really scale, it's. Sorry, I forgot what I wanted to say. No, yeah, but I mean, Zotonic is not meant for billion user websites, right? You're not going to make Facebook with it, because it's a dynamic. It's a framework which has dynamic properties. So if you want to really scale out, you always have to write your own code, and you cannot get away with doing everything the standard way, basically. So there are limitations to it, but that's what Mark is saying. For like a medium to medium scale website, it should perform great.
Yeah, actually, we have some websites here that we got stats from some websites. We can't say which websites, but there are sites within Zotonic that have 1 million hits an hour, and we don't give much load on the database or in the system at all. So really work well.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, we've also the womenonwaves.org site. That is the famous abortion bot that goes to countries, and they get quite a bit of traffic, of course, with their subject. And yeah, we basically don't have any problems with handling their traffic, and that goes about 60,000 visitors in a couple of hours, and a couple of thousand open connections at the same time. And then at that moment, it's a very simple server they are running on, but still with a load far below 1.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, you mentioned before that when we were talking about, comparisons to other frameworks or CMSs and stuff, that you're using a modular system and people are contributing modules and writing modules. So is there a big community there that I can go and look? Say, I'm thinking of something similar to maybe the Drupal contributed modules that I could go and look through. Do you have like community spaces where I could go and look for modules if I wanted to install some?
Yeah, there's modules.zotonic.com, but I mean it's not in the same ballpark as Drupal, obviously. But there are definitely modules out there, user contributed, and they have their own space where they can upload them. And we have a mailing list with active contributors and people asking questions and people answering questions. So that's really great.
And how much work's involved in creating a module? And is it similar to something like Drupal, where you just create a module file with your code in it? Like in this case, it'd be Erlang or so on. What's the kind of requirements for that?
Yeah, basically, there's a command. Basically, you just have to write you have to write an Erlang file. But there's a command which generates that Erlang file for you. You can create a new module, and then you can install it in. You basically just move it into your site directory, and it will be recognized as a module, and you click the enable button in the admin, and it will activate it. And a module is actually just a container for everything. So what Mark was saying about its extensibility, so it has a priority system, so it can override stuff that other modules define even. So if you want to, make a different template for something or use a different URL scheme for something, it's just easy to add your own module with a slightly higher priority to override stuff. And you can extend anything you want with that.
Okay, that sounds really cool. But I mean, one of the things that I do worry slightly about is, and I'm sure you'll be able to answer this, is like the security implications of this kind of stuff and the stability stuff. So how do you approach security and stuff in your model?
Yeah, we are quite paranoid, to say so.
Okay.
So the security in the system itself, we tend to have close to the database level, to really in the models. So it's not some high level check, but really close to the models. They stop a lot. And we have a very aggressive content filter. Whatever goes into the database is filtered, is sanitized. And it is super aggressive, only works with whitelists. So everything that doesn't recognize, is thrown out. And the same happens with all the other stuff.
Ah, excellent. So it sounds like you're really taking obviously you take your security very seriously.
Last year even we have a pretty high profile project here in the Netherlands, which was used for an event that had to do with the green actually.
Now we can tell it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can tell it.
We can tell it now. Yeah.
It was secret for over a year, so it has to do with some royal event. And for that, we built a multi-server setup, Zotonic cluster, and it was actually audited by a big KPMG, is a big software company or consultant company, and they were actually really impressed with the code, and they didn't find any security things whatsoever. Well, I cannot say that they looked everywhere, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that Zotonic doesn't have any leaks, but they were pretty impressed.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a cool way to get almost a free audit, isn't it? Well, get a security audit, and that's really good. Yeah, well, even better than free, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it was funny because they said they loved the setup and the code. And that was the first time we heard that L word coming from a company like KPMG. And to also come back to performance issues, this system is used to do all kind of voting, where people can select projects they can vote on in different categories, etc. And we have benchmarked the system for the real moment that it will happen, that people can vote for this, it is for our new king. And we handled about, 250,000 voting sequences. So the whole thing with fetching all data, fetching all images, fetching all the CSS, going through all the steps, etc. within an hour on a 3-cluster medium setup, virtual machines. And we could handle more. It was, I think it is more like that the testing machine was overloaded by then. It's not.
Or they saturated their bandwidth. That could also be. I don't know.
That was at first, yeah. That we saturated. They first tested it from an office somewhere, and they saturated their fiber connection from our 3-server setup. So yeah, so we had to move to a gigabit line close to the servers to test it further.
Oh, cool.
But, yeah, and what about on the system?
Yeah, okay. And what about, what's the kind of team like that works on this? Obviously, we got you two guys, but how big's the team of people working on this, and what kind of roles do they split into?
Yeah, now it's I started it. I came with it pretty soon. And I was working also with a front-end developer. He is now working mostly on other stuff, but we have some other front-end developer also. We have a project leader, Michiel Kleunhammer. He is really experienced. He had his own company at some time, and the company is still there. But he's a very experienced director of that. And we have some people based in Amsterdam, some other people, somebody in Sweden, and we're working together with people all over the place. A couple of people from America, from the States also, and from Eastern Europe also. They are very interested in Erlang and this kind of systems. So it's a bit all over the place.
Yeah, so I can say I think the core development team is 6 GitHub committers and 1 project manager basically. And then we get pull requests almost daily from users. So pretty busy actually with just maintaining the code.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago we got a full Chinese translation of the whole system, for example. So that's quite nice to get.
Yeah, and that was something I was interested in, like community contributions to this as well. So you're getting quite a bit of feedback from the community. You're getting translations. You get much code coming in as well. Can people commit code or send you a patch or something?
Yeah, it started really started to pick up once we switched to Git and GitHub slightly more than a year ago, and so it's been picking up pretty well. And yeah, like I say, we get a lot of pull requests. So and most of them are pretty sane things. So I just merge them in, so they can contribute code by just sending by using GitHub. So that's really convenient. And actually, also the documentation system now uses Git. So we also get a lot of documentation fixes, changes, typos. So it's a really vibrant community. Yeah.
Cool. And I have to ask my favorite question, which is about licensing. So what license are you using for the project, and why did you pick that license?
Apache we use. And so it's a bit like MIT, but then a bit more text. So that's what people like, more text in this case. And it is a very good license because you can really reuse the system in any way you want. So that's why we didn't go with GPL or whatever, because we didn't really want people to use it for everything they want to use it for. And we also want to be able to do that ourselves as well. And in that respect, it's also important that I am self-employed, Arjen is self-employed, our project leader is self-employed, our guy in Sweden is self-employed. So actually there are a lot of different companies coming together. And also some real companies are also really in the core development team. And so it's very important to not be GPL, but to be Apache or MIT.
So this isn't your only job then? I mean, you guys are working on other projects as well currently?
Yeah, well, actually, so I'm a freelance web developer, so I do a lot of web projects, and I try to do most of them actually with Zotonic, obviously. So that I mean, in that way, we get clients paying for Zotonic development. So that's a real nice way. But I also do a bit of other stuff next to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for Mark, I think it's the same. Mark has slightly bigger, longer projects. I do everything at the same time for some reason.
Yeah, you tend to have also some small projects in between. Yeah. Some of my projects are always big. Of course, I'm working on Max Class and some derivative versions of that one. Where this code extension mechanism is very, very convenient. And I have some bigger customers, Wim and Onbeheers, as I told about, and doing Erlang consultancy.
Yeah.
Besides it.
Is that the way that the project makes money in general right now, is support basically?
Yeah. We don't make money off Zotonic directly. We only basically it's our love baby, as you can say it. It's we really like working on the project, and we like having clients that like the product. So so all the stuff that we do is actually how do you say that? I don't know.
Actually, there's also another side of it, and that is that our customers, they often demand that the system that's used is open source. And they also have all kinds of other demands, like performance. And then we can't use any PHP system at all, because we can't get that performance out of the box without getting too complicated for them. So we use Zotonic in that case. And so we have to have it open source for those customers. And they also love it when we say, hey, that customer paid for that module for you. That mailing list extension that you needed is just being paid for by that other customer. Mm-hmm. And the thing you paid for is now used by that customer. And they love that exchange.
That's great. That's a nice problem to have. I love it when that happens. Personally, it doesn't happen all the time. So that's wonderful that your customers are demanding an open source solution. I wanted to get back to a couple of things, just touch on a couple of things that you mentioned earlier, especially in regards to performance. Is there any way to benchmark these systems? Have you benchmarked Zotonic against Drupal, or is there any way to have some sort of head-to-head performance metric so that you can kind of get a handle on which system is better for what workloads?
Yeah, there have been some benchmarks by other people also, and in general, we see that our system Zotonic is about 10 times faster. Mm. So. It all depends very much, of course, on the kind of request you're doing. When it's a search in a database, then big chance that search of the database itself is the big chunk of the time spent. But say if it's a normal page with some text on it, say your about page, something like that, some context, etc., then usually we can serve such a page within a couple of milliseconds, and because we are running out of memory at some point. And so usually we tend to say that we can serve a page before PHP would have been started.
I think that might be very nice, but it's of course it's a bit more nuanced, slightly more subtle than that. Like I mean, you have these PHP accelerators now, like PHP FPM and stuff like that. So a lot has been optimized also on the PHP side. So I mean, I don't want to. I want to bring a PHP to the grave just yet.
It's great for small things.
Yeah.
It just tends to slow down when you have a lot of code. That's the biggest issue with PHP. And the failure mode. So we can handle failure very well in the system that's based on Erlang and the real-time stuff. But we concentrated a lot on getting quite a bit of performance out of the system by removing the obvious bottlenecks. Right. And by being able to do so many things at the same time. So, yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, so you're not all queued up waiting for something else to happen before this other thing can go on.
Yeah, and I mean because it's Erlang, it's really so easy to do stuff asynchronously. So everything that we don't when you do a request, everything that's not needed to do right now, like sending an email or whatever, you can just spawn a process out. You don't have to have a complicated setup like AMQP or Gearman or whatever. You can just spawn a process and it will send the email for you like a second later or whatever. And it's that Erlang makes it so easy to integrate all that stuff.
Right.
That makes also very convenient.
Let's talk for a minute. I know Dan kind of touched on this a little bit, but when he was talking about plugins and things, but I'm kind of curious about how you guys approach the user interface. What kind of design principles are you using, and how easy is it to theme and make it look, make a website look the way I want to? I mean, most people are just using CSS these days, so I'm assuming that's the way the theming would go. But can you speak to interface and design concepts?
Yeah, we see very different roles there, and so you have there's a choice you have to make when you have a CMS system or when you have a website. One route some systems go is that the user can do anything in the browser. We definitely said no, we don't want that. We have a clear role here for a front-end developer, but our extension mechanism makes it easy to just change that CSS file, or change that one image, or change that part, or change that part of a template. You can say, this is just like that, but now a bit different. And put this in front, put this in back, and now change it. And that is really a very powerful way for front developers to get to use a site, like the basic site we have. We have a basic site in the system, module-based site we call it. And that implements a site for phone, a tablet, a text site, and a full-featured site for desktop. And so depending on device, you get different parts of the templates. And it's very easy to just change part of that and then extend it. And it is also using now Twitter Bootstrap. So it's quite simple. Most people are experiencing that to add their own theming then. But yeah, you only need a module that says, okay, now they take this Twitter Bootstrap CSS file and ready.
Mm-hmm. And what about in terms of administration and things like that? Is the GUI fairly easy to use, to administer and change things around?
Yeah, it is.
Well, what do you mean exactly? Because there's most of the actual user interface, like the admin system, is the CMS part, and I mean you can switch on and off modules, and there's like a configuration interface, but not everything has a configuration interface. So,
well, I guess that's what I'm wondering is if I'm going to deploy the system, how much time am I going to spend between at the command line trying to figure things out, or in a text editor doing programming, and how much time am I just going to spend in the interface? And I know the answer is probably it depends on what you're doing, but how much time am I going to spend in the actual interface changing things around and making settings there?
I think what I usually do is what most people do is just they have a development website or a staging website for a customer, so they set that up. And I mean, yeah, if you have to configure a Twitter username or whatever, you still have to do that, of course. But then so you do that probably in the user interface, and then once you want to deploy that, you take a dump of the database, because all configuration settings are in the configuration table in the database, and then you just basically import the database on your production server, and you start it up. So at that point, there's not so much. There's no complicated text files that you need to change at that point.
Yeah, actually, it is what the normal setup. What we normally do is we have, of course, for customer, we have a staging website where you can see the new version. We normally use Git or Mercurial for that. And then when you go to the production version, when they say, hey, this is good enough, then you go to the production site. Then we have this administrative environment where you have this whole list of sites that are running on that particular single Zotonic server, because we have virtual hosting. And then behind those sites is a little button that says update. And that update fetches the new version from Git, compiles, and does hot code loading of all the new code. So runtime, we update the whole system at that point. And so that's for the workflow when you have front-end development and etc. and you do it. Then your question is, of course, have many sides to it. When you look to the content side of it, because we have a strict separation between content and how it is displayed. The content is very easy. You have an administrative environment where somebody can just add any administrator can add any category he wants. And add also relations between objects in the database. Basically, we have very simple data model for the CMS part. And we have one table with resources, things. Anything is a thing. And one table with relations between the two. So we can have an article and then a person. And relation between the two could be author. And all that kind of information is can be edited, can be changed by an editor or by an administrative editor. Mm-hmm. So that's very easy. And then when you want, we have also different access control modules. So you can also add kind of a role system to when you don't want everybody to linger around and change categories or add categories. Then you can add another access control system instead of the standard access control system, and have roles in the system that somebody can only make news articles, that kind of stuff.
Right, right. So how would you convince me as a Drupal user currently to switch to Zotonic? What would you say? I mean, are there migration tools if I wanted to move my data over? Because one thing that I've been in the middle of a Drupal 5 to Drupal 7 upgrade now for the past 2 years. And,
2 years.
That's just because I don't have time to work on it. But it is very difficult, actually, to upgrade in Drupal, I think, anyway. I think they make it unnecessarily complicated. How would you convince me to switch? Because I'm kind of interested. I'd like to. First of all, does it run on BSD? Because I'm running BSD now at home to my
yes, it does.
Much to my demise, unfortunately, at this point. But I want to do it. I'm committed to get things working on BSD. So does it work on BSD? Yes, it does. How would I get my data over into? I mean, because it's a completely different system. So how would that happen?
For Drupal, we don't have. I'm not aware of any import modules. For WordPress, there is one. So WordPress makes it easy to export an XML file with all your data in it, plus links to the images. So there's an import module. So basically takes that WXR file and processes it, and it basically recreates all your blog posts and images inside Zotonic. So for WordPress, it's very easy. For Drupal currently, I'm not really sure of the existence of such a tool. It's I mean it's really it's I don't know.
Yeah, it might be. It depends on what kind of Drupal site you have, of course. But I think the basic model of Drupal, that everything is a node, where our model is everything is a resource, that should fit quite nicely. And so I don't think it would be too hard to make such a thing. But we never needed to migrate Drupal site, so we never made it. And I also not aware of anybody who needed to do that. There are quite some difference though when you have a multilingual site. Mm-hmm. Because as far, maybe you could correct me when I'm wrong, as far as I know, then when you need multiple language versions of a node, a page, then you need to make multiple nodes in Drupal. And we store all the language versions in the same page. So you translate on a page-by-page basis. And so one page can have like 10 different languages, including Arabic right to left, no problem. We support that. Another page has only English. And so you don't need to make a whole new site for translation. But that is really something how that is handled differently between the two systems. And that might be difficult to convert.
Yeah. How does it explain
just
that?
English, yeah.
Explain that just a little bit more, because I want to understand. So if I wanted a multilingual site, I don't have a multilingual site, but let's say I wanted a multilingual site, would I add a module for that particular language, and then it would automatically display that language depending on the user's browser settings?
Yeah, basically
actually,
what you do is you
yeah, you can do. You can do. Yeah.
All right. So you basically the translation module that ships with Zotonic translates both content, so the basic data model, plus the static content, like get text like strings, static strings. So basically you enable that module, and then you would get an extra option in the Zotonic admin interface for configuring which languages are active on your site. So you say, okay, I want both English and Dutch to be active. And then when you edit your article, you automatically get tabs for the different language versions. So you can edit it in multiple languages. And actually on the front end, the language that is displayed is selected by the language of the browser or by a cookie for language preference. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's done automatically.
And I know we talked a little bit about hosting this before, guys, and how you do that kind of thing. I've just been doing some searches while you were chatting there for web hosts that support Zotonic right now. If I were to just try and use commercial hosting, I can't seem to find a hell of a lot right now. But is there much out there for commercial hosting? Is it something you'd be interested in, or are you more interested in the development and not becoming like sysadmins and looking after hosting other people's sites, if you know what I mean?
Actually, we have some sites running which we support ourselves. We have some server hanging somewhere, and that turned big enough. It's a very small machine that turned big enough to host a lot of sites. And we have some sites abroad. For some legal reasons, they are abroad. But there's a lot of people just rent a VPS and run it on that one. That's mostly easier because then you have a real IP address. There are also people who run it on WebFaction. And we got some questions from people who wanted to develop commercial support for Zotonic.
Okay. So it's not something you're looking to do in-house so much?
No, it's also currently not, for instance, for Heroku or something. It's not possible to use. It would be really nice actually if they would start to support Zotonic. But no, it's not something that we're after. I think I'm not much of a system administrator myself, so I'd rather be developing. But like Mark is saying, most people are just using their own VPS server and just install a few packages and that's it. And that's what you do with a lot of systems these days, I think.
Yeah. And I was looking through some of these results. There's a few guides that have popped up to installing this on Amazon EC2. A lot of people doing that kind of thing. Would you consider making an appliance or something for EC2 for people to deploy with, or anything like that in future for cloud stuff, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean I think that's a good option. I mean, there's a Zotonic demo site, demo.zotonic.com, that actually runs on EC2. It's like the sandbox site where you can actually look in the admin and see, you can log in as administrator, and then see what's going on, enable modules, etc. And that runs fine on a micro instance. So I mean, yeah, I would definitely look into those tools, and I can probably even publish that API that I built for the demo site.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to do something similar. I mean, a lot of people are deploying in the cloud these days, so I think that would really help. Let me ask you real quick before we wrap up. We're almost out of time, but what's coming down the road for this project? What types of things are you working on for future releases?
Yeah, there's one big thing that's still on our radar is the distributed version. We call it Dynamo. We are really working on that one, and that is, of course, for our Queen-King transition. That one is also used, but it is not good enough to give out to people yet and to say, hey, here is it, use it. So we really want to, we got also subsidy to develop that one. So that one is definitely on our radar pretty soon. And yeah, what else, Arjen?
Well, running it on smaller hardware, I think, is a really nice thing, because like there are people developing on small Atom netbooks, and they're complaining that sometimes stuff times out because some processing are taking too long. We really want to optimize it also for the lower end of the spectrum, not only for the big multi-core machines. So we're actually I'm actually starting to look into deploy it on these Raspberry Pi systems. I already got it running, actually. I think Pete here in the room was the first one to run it on on the Raspberry Pi. So that like small hardware plus clustering and dynamic upscaling is really the focus of the in the future.
Yeah, and what you said before, multiple database support. So MySQL SQLite
of course,
is definitely on the radar. We have also a project running with editing, so that people can edit at the same time, like in Google Docs. That you have this real-time editing. So really using the real-time features of our system, and integration of better integration of XMPP, so that you can have chat, real chat into the system and on the website at the same time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a whole host of great things are coming down the line. I really want to check this out, so I'm going to see if maybe I can get my data up into. I'll get this up and running at home, and then see if I can somehow get my data, maybe back-end it through WordPress and then into Zotonic. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Go the roundabout method. So. So we'll see how that works. So I've got to ask you a few questions as we wrap up here. Otherwise, Randall brings the hammer down. So the first question is, favorite scripting or programming language?
Erlang,
for me,
obviously.
Erlang.
That's what I figured, but I had to ask it. So one more thing, as long as we're on the topic, how hard is it to pick up Erlang for people that haven't used it before, if they're familiar with other languages?
Yeah, well, what I always tell is the story of Arjen, basically. Was Arjen got on a Saturday morning, he got the book from Joe Armstrong about Erlang. And Sunday afternoon, he checked in a module into Zotonic with the API. So that was all he needed to get running. Of course, to get really fluent, to know all the ins and outs, it takes a bit longer, but it's with every system. But normally, I would, from scratch, when your head can handle a bit of functional languages, then you should be within a week.
So it's really just figuring out the differences in syntax and things like that, how to get things to work.
Well, Erlang is a functional language, so it's pretty different from Python or PHP, and that's like the biggest thing. There are no loops. You have to do recursion, or you have to do maps or folds, or so. I think like switching from a normal like imperative language to a functional language is the biggest hurdle you need to take. But if you know like Scala or Haskell, then you should obviously be fine. And actually, what Mark is saying is a bit of. I studied AI, so I already knew Prolog, so that also gave me a bit of a head start. But I think it's a very, very nice language, and
it's a very small language. Just fits mostly on one A4 or something. It's super small, and when you have a bit of background in C, and then you also recognize the pragmatism in the language and in the libraries. And the only thing you shouldn't be scared of is the syntax. So people don't like it when the language doesn't have curly braces. This one doesn't have curly braces. So it has commas and dots and semicolons, and you have to get used to that. But with any language.
The thing that was the worst for me was that variables are capitalized instead of lowercase as in other language. So that's like
Prolog.
It's weird for the eyes. But once you get over it, syntax. Who cares about syntax anyway?
Yeah, well, that's what I figured. And if you have a good IDE that you're using that can recognize what you're programming in, that helps too, because then it calls out like, wait, this doesn't make sense, or this is a different color because it doesn't quite fit the paradigm that you're using. So
most editors understand Erlang perfectly. I use Emacs myself, so it has the on-the-fly compilation of your file, so it immediately shows where you forget something.
Right. Well, what a segue into the next question that I have to ask, which is, what text editor do you typically
Emacs.
use?
I'm not just touching Emacs. I'm using Sublime and also TextMate. But TextMate is a bit slow within, so now mostly Sublime.
Right, right. Good. Well, it's some variety there. That's great. So, well, I just want to thank you guys for joining us. Where should people go to get more information about the project? What's the best place to go?
Zotonic.com and Twitter @Zotonic.
Okay, and I know you guys also made a movie or something. I think it's just a short video clip, though, right? I mean, if you go on YouTube and you do a search, you come up with this the movie that you guys did.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, actually, it was shot in the same room that I'm sitting in right now. But it's it's a little promotion video, like with a girl who's asking, should I use this for my website, and what are the good aspects about it, and is it really that good, etc. So it's a funny movie. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's just for promotional purposes.
Yeah, I think it's just a few minutes long. Really, it's not very difficult. But
yeah, but gets people maybe interested. People like movies, like moving things, and so yeah, it gets quite a lot of people watch it, and we get some feedback about it. So it makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We'll add some more.
Right, and like I said, when I searched for it, I mean that was the first thing that popped up, which is what you want, right, when you're doing. Yeah. That sort of promotional work. So I think that's really good. So people should definitely go to YouTube and search for it. It'll come right up.
Yeah, yeah, because we are also busy really trying to promote it and giving it better visibility. So we are working now also with a company here, Manschaft. They are a design company to get a good new look on the website, everything professional. We have the whole project management. We have now better organized. We have a very big pool of freelancers that do projects. And we are always on the look for more committers, more people who want to work together with us. And investors also welcome, of course, always.
Right.
And so, so it is very, you get more and more organized. And you see that also in this kind of movies that we are making.
Yep, great. Well, Mark and Arjan, thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope a lot of people will get involved. I mean, especially if they're interested in Erlang, they want to start learning that. It seems like this would be a good project to get started in. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you
for having us. And when you have questions, when you're moving a blog, just give a shout.
I will.
We're there to help you.
I've got your email addresses now, so
yeah.
Perfect.
Great, thanks, guys. So Dan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, a fascinating project. I haven't done much with Erlang, I have to confess. Well, when I say not much, that basically means anything with Erlang at this point. And I've just been having a look through, as you were talking there, through some tutorials and things, and I may give it a go and see if I can pick it up. It sounds like they're really getting incredible performance out of the system due to the language and the way they've built it and so on. And I think that could draw a lot of people in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, is that the performance angle is really huge, especially for, when you're trying to deploy a system where you need to support, hundreds of thousands of potentially connections and things going, things happening simultaneously. The fact that it's asynchronous is really, really important because you can handle user A's request that may be taking a while at the same time you're handling user B's request and so on down the line. So I think that performance angle is really, really important. So really, really interesting project. I'm definitely going to try it when I get home. Yet another thing to add to my list. Speaking of things to add to the list, you should add upcoming FLOSS Weekly podcast to your list. And to do that, I'm going to help you out because I'm going to tell you what's coming up. How do you like that transition? It was kind of long and awkward, but it worked, I think.
Smooth, I thought.
So upcoming on the show, next week is a little bit of a, I'm not sure if we're actually having a show next week. We'll have to figure out what's going on there. But definitely for March 6th, we have Cake PHP is coming up. So if you're familiar with Cake PHP or PHP, it's a PHP framework that makes building web applications simpler, faster, and require less code. So it'll be a good foil to this show, actually, talking a little bit more about PHP. And then on March 16th, and I think, Dan, you're going to be hosting that show along with a very handsome co-host.
Yeah, hopefully.
I think it's me. And then on March 16th, Randall will be back from all his travels and cruises and turtle petting and all the things he's doing. And we're going to be talking about Poodle, which I think we were going to do before, and then it got moved or something. So if you don't remember, Poodle is a user-friendly web portal that makes translation a lot simpler. So translating documents and things into different languages. It allows online translation, work assignment, gives statistics, and allows people to jump in and help out really easily. So that'll be interesting. And not the dog, it's called Poodle with a T. And then on November 21st, we're going to be talking about Dart, which is an open source web programming language developed by Google. You may have heard of it. Initially, it was intended, I believe, to replace JavaScript. So we're going to be talking about Dart. That should be really interesting. And that's on November 21st, unless something changes. So, Dan, anything you want to plug before we wrap up?
No, just the usual stuff. Linux Outlaws, we had our 300th episode of Linux Outlaws, which is a weekly show about open source, obviously Linux, as it says in the title, but other things as well, which we do at, if you search for Linux Outlaws, it will turn up all over the place. Yeah, we did the 300th episode in front of a live audience on Sunday night, and it gave me the chance to finally say, after all these years, Linux Outlaws is recorded in front of a live studio audience, which I've always wanted to say, but I could never do before. In Happy Days style.
Right, exactly. That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, so go and check that out. And then if you want to find me on Twitter or Google Plus or any of those other places, my address is danlynch.org is my website, and all the details are on there.
Great. And if you want to follow what I'm doing, you should go to Google Plus and add me to your circles, and you can find all about what I'm talking about there. I usually talk about open source, making stuff. Got a couple of cool projects going on. There's always the open source, or the Raspberry Pi old time radio. I'm still working on coding some stuff in Python and getting that finished up. Got a couple of cool projects coming up as well. If you're out of power and you have a cloudy day and you want to charge up your cell phone, maybe you can fly a kite and charge up your cell phone that way. So I'm working on that project, as well as a few other projects, some solar stuff and things like that. So if you follow me on Google Plus, you'll hear me talk about all that kind of stuff coming up very shortly. So definitely join me there. If you want to follow Floss Weekly online, you can do it on Twitter. At Floss Weekly or plus Floss Weekly on Google Plus. We usually, Randall and I hang out there, so that's a good place to follow us. You can join the conversation live at live.twit.tv, or you can actually chat with us at irc.twit.tv. So however you like to join in and have a conversation, that would be great. We usually try to get the IRC questions in. I didn't see too many questions today, but try to get those IRC questions in on every show so that you can get some live feedback if you're watching live, which is a lot of fun. So that'll do it for this episode of Floss Weekly. Thanks for joining, and be sure to join us next time. It should be a lot of fun. I'll do the finger.
Hi, I'm Mark Borel.
And I'm Arjan Scherpenisse. We're two of the people behind Zotonic.
With Zotonic, every developer can quickly create an ultra-stable, high-performance web application.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. So, with all the buzz I've been creating, I get quite a lot of visitors on my website. Should I start using Zotonic?
You sure do. You'll be able to have a great website running within a few minutes. And with Zotonic's built-in content management system, you can also maintain it.
Alright, but when you say high performance, how fast are we talking?
Well, look at this chart. We know Zotonic delivers the fastest responding and rock-stable website you'll ever see. And it's designed to be extensible, so it can easily build upon, just like a framework.
Oh, and before you ask, the speed and stability is due to the use of Erlang.
Oh, hi Mike. Yeah, thanks. I'll mention that. So, Erlang is fault-tolerant, scalable, and all code can be upgraded without any downtime.
Erlang, right. It sounds like a lot of work. Do I need special web developers if I want something like Twitter integration?
Well, most obvious protocols and web integrations are already built into Zotonic, like Facebook and Twitter integration, and sending and receiving email. Plus, with Zotonic's extension mechanism, you find it a breeze to add modules or connect to your favorite APIs or protocols.
Right. Although it's a young project, Zotonic has been used now for several years in mission-critical websites. It is open source and is continuously extended and improved upon by developers from all around the world.
To make things even easier, we enhanced the Django template language, so any front-end developer can make fresh designs and new functionalities.
So are you ready for Zotonic? We believe you are. Of course, Zotonic is well documented, so you can start right away.
Just go to zotonic.com and get started.
And for support and the latest on the project, follow us on Twitter @Zotonic.
Guys, I'm really impressed. I'm sold.